To help get us started. Patrice?
Thanks so much, Mike. I'm Patrice. I'm the Senior Director at Energy Solutions, the Illinois Shines Program Administrator. And we're really thankful, as Mike said, for everybody joining us today, and especially for Audrey Steinbeck, Senior Program Manager at IPA for Illinois Shines. Audrey and other IPA and Energy Solutions staff are going to be on the chat today, watching for questions and answering your questions as they come up. So please go ahead and tap in any questions as you have them throughout the agenda. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda for the day. Oh, that's us. Thanks, Mike. And so a couple of housekeeping items. Everybody's going to be muted. And so, like I said, if you do have questions, please put them into the chat box, and then we can address those as we go. We're going to answer as many questions as we can, and we will follow up after the meeting with the Q&A that we were able to answer, as well as any outstanding questions. So that will be provided along with this deck after today's webinar. So taking a look at today's agenda, we have the welcome back. We're going to talk about some of the updates for the programs and the resources and guidance coming from IPA. We're going to talk about the REC contracts and prices. There are some changes for 2024. We want to make sure that we take a look at those. We'll look at what the annual block capacity and reallocations are expected to look like. We're going to talk a bit about the equity accountability system, and then also prevailing wage requirements, a reminder of those requirements that have been in place for a couple of years. We'll talk about the mentorship program. So what we got started last year as a pilot, and the program upcoming this year. The portal and website updates for the year. Talking a little bit about stakeholder support for the upcoming year, and then with any time left at the end of the hour, some Q&A. We'll direct those in the webinar. So with that, I'm pleased to hand it over to Audrey to get us started on the content today.
Thanks, Patrice. On behalf of the IPA, I want to thank everyone for a successful 2023-2024 program year as we look forward to the next program year ahead. The IPA, oh, there go my headphones. Sorry about that. The IPA has been really hard at work over the past year implementing not just the Illinois Shines program, but also a ton of other initiatives related to renewables and equity across the state. So 2 things I want to highlight is the agency released a policy study earlier this year that studies the impacts of various energy-related policy proposals. We really encourage the review of this study and hope it proves to be useful to conversations related to future energy policy in the state. Additionally, the IPA released our 2023 annual report, which details our work across the state that goes beyond the implementation of the Illinois Shines program. As we continue to grow our agency to support the state's call to action in the energy space, I just wanted to note that we really appreciate everyone's support in both our work as a whole, as well as in the implementation of the Illinois Shines program. Thanks again for being here. And with that, I am going to pass back to Patrice.
Thanks, Audrey. So just taking a look at where we are today and our areas of continued focus over the last couple of years, there's certainly been a lot of activity and some changes in the program. And so just to highlight some of the areas that we're continuing to focus on. Application processing, certainly first and foremost, getting the submitted applications reviewed and moving forward as quickly as possible through those high volumes of submission. We do have additional training and cross-training of our teams. We have a team that has been with us largely for over a year. And so that really allows us to be very thoughtful and thorough in the reviews and quicker than we had previously when we had a lot of new staff starting with the program. We've had a lot of updates in portal functionality, and we're going to continue on focusing on those. There's a lot of validation and automation that has been added into the portal this past cycle, and we'll continue to do more validation and improving automation. So it's a little bit easier for the submissions, and honestly, a little bit more easy, quicker and easier for our processors as well. Additionally, we're meeting with utilities to make sure that we're meeting their needs of getting the portal information, the data submitted in applications to them more easily. Our contact center has grown over the last year. We're still seeing a large volume of email and phone calls coming in, and so we've grown our team, not only in number, but also in education. We have a lot of resources for that contact center to reference, and so they're more able to answer your questions right off the bat when calling in or sending in an email. For sector strategy, we have focus strategists that work with the individual project owners. So the ABs that are focused on community solar versus large DG or small DG, the EEC folks. We have strategists that are working individually with them and really have a great understanding of not just the rules of the program, but the barriers and the considerations for that kind of subset of ABs. And we learn a lot through our one-on-ones as well as our working groups and our roundtables. And so that's a really important part of what we're hearing back from the market. Consumer protection has been a very busy team indeed this year. As the program continues to grow and develop, the need for consumer protection has grown. And so that team has grown in number as well as areas of focus and identifying the best ways to really serve our customers, our consumers, while keeping the program but understanding the needs of the ABs and participation. So really balancing the complexity of the program with the needs of the consumers to protect those consumers, and working with those ABs to understand the rules and to support them in adhering to those rules. And then finally, communications. So in addition to our consistent, rich weekly updates, we've had special announcements throughout the week, and we'll continue to have special announcements both via email as well as posted on the website. So they're always available for reference a week later, 2 weeks later, a year later. And that continues to grow on our site as a great source for those communications and updates. So taking a look at the state of the program and looking back on the previous year, just wrapping up this month, as mentioned, the application volumes have been really high. We've seen a great deal of participation specifically in small DG, and we're seeing a lot of the small DG Part 2 applications coming in from this year and previous years. And so the volume is really exciting, and we're responding with increased, as I mentioned, increased processing staff and resources to continue moving those forward. Of course, the equity and consumer protection goals are paramount, very important for the program and for the state to ensure that we're supporting equity in our program participation through the mentorship program, through the MES reporting and plans that we're taking a look at just starting now in the middle of the calendar year, the start of the program year, and refining the advance of capital criteria. So that's another thing that we took a look at in the past year that we really refined in close coordination with IPA. Again, the portal development, continuing troubleshooting and feature development to ensure a better experience for all of the users, both the ABs and then for processing, so we can quickly get back to review and to verify those applications coming in. Mentioned earlier the stakeholder forums and feedback. This is really an important aspect of the program, so we can really hear what are the barriers and how we might be able to address the barriers of participation. So those roundtables, the one-on-ones, surveys are all really great ways for ABs and designees to provide insight into how the program's working, what's working well, and what they might need a little support on. And then again, support center and communications, really refining the information that we have as an implementer, as a program team, so we're able to provide that to that support to the stakeholders and to the participants. So looking ahead for the next phase, starting in a couple of weeks, uh, continued vendor and designee support. So a special focus on EECs and equity eligible persons. We're doing project inspections that just began this past spring, so we'll continue doing those. We're refining what that process looks like to ensure that we're doing equitable and fair inspections across the state. We're hosting forums for stakeholder participation and feedback, and then continuing that education out. So receiving the information in and education out. Application submission and processing, just sustaining our not only the portal functionality, but sustaining that input and output to move through this high volume quickly and accurately. Market development, we're continuing community outreach and public-facing promotion. We're looking to organize sector-specific insights and resources and support those stakeholders, including EECs and small businesses specifically. And consumer protection. Again, we have a lot going on consumer protection. There's a lot of projects that have been implemented over the past number of years, and now that they have been implemented for a number of years, making sure that those REC payments are being made, making sure that there aren't any problems with maintenance and follow-up, and then certainly at the front end as well, making sure that the projects are being installed accurately and completely and on time, and those initial REC payments are being passed through. So this, as the program expands and grows and applications increase, the consumer protection team has more work to do. So continued focus on improving that and continuing that good work. All right, and so just a list of some of the most important resources and guidance. All of this information can be found on the website. And so at any time, you can take a look at the website and find this documentation. But as a reminder, the block capacity will be updated on June 3rd. So for the start of the next cycle, we'll have those block capacity updates with the brand new dashboard for the new cycle, as the capacity has changed a little bit with DG not having the group A and B anymore. So the dashboard will look a little bit different, but it will include all of the capacity allocated for the new cycle on June 3rd, once you log into the website on June 3rd. And then, of course, updates happen throughout the year. So as there are program announcements, as there are any updates to documentation, all of that can be found on the program website and typically linked in the program announcements that are emailed. So you can find that information both in your inbox as well as referenceable on the website. So with that, in looking at all of our resources and guidance, I'm going to hand it back over to Audrey for some updates and other information.
Thanks, Patrice. So I'm going to walk us through the update to the long-term plan, which is the document that really sets the foundation for all the requirements related to the program. So across 2023 and into 2024, the IPA completed the update to the long-term renewable resources plan, which we're just going to call the long-term plan for short here. And this update takes place every 2 years. So last summer, we started with requesting feedback from program participants on possible changes to Chapter 7 of the plan, which is the chapter that outlines requirements for Illinois Shines. Across the fall and then the winter, the plan was litigated in front of the ICC, with final decisions on contested items coming in the ICC's final order on February 20th of this year. So as mentioned, this is a process that takes place every 2 years. So this process will begin again next year in preparation for a new final long-term plan in 2026. So changes to the program via the long-term plan are then carried through to updates to the program guidebook, the consumer protection handbook, and a lot of those other resources that Patrice just was speaking to in the previous slide. Next slide, please. So updates to the program guidebook. The program guidebook that goes into effect on June 3rd for the new program year was released on April 18th in order to ensure all program participants had ample time to review all of the many updates that were affected there. all program participants are expected to be familiar with and to act in compliance with all the changes to the guidebook for the new program year. A few high-level changes are listed here that I want to call out, including the elimination of groups A and B for the distributed generation categories. This is just an elimination of the groups for capacity purposes, not for rec pricing purposes, which we'll see a little bit later when we talk about rec pricing. Additionally, an overall program capacity increase from 666 megawatts to 800 megawatts, which represents about 20% increase in overall program size. We also see updates to the prioritization of uncontracted capacity at the end of the program year, new subcategories in the EEC and public schools program categories, a pricing cap for waitlisted projects, a new DC-AC ratio for projects that have storage components, increased application fees, and changes to the traditional community solar scoring criteria. So just a reminder that all of these changes and more are found in the updated guidebook. And we've also provided a redline version of this new guidebook as compared to last program year's guidebook so that these changes are easier to find and everyone can familiarize themselves with the updates. Next slide, please. So similar to the program guidebook, the Consumer Protection Handbook was updated for this upcoming program year as well. Some key changes as listed here include updates to requirements related to consolidated billing and discipline related to affiliated entities and more. Again, all program participants are expected to act in compliance with all updated requirements. So please make sure to understand all of these new requirements. And we've also provided a redline version from last year's CP handbook to this new version of the CP handbook, again, to more quickly identify those changes in your review. Next slide, please. Okay, along with the changes that are taking effect on June 3rd, the agency also proposed several new and exciting consumer protection initiatives that will begin to really take shape in this upcoming program year. These new initiatives really are intended to support customers that have been harmed by bad actors, which is something the program and the IPA are extremely committed to. The initiatives are outlined in more detail in Chapter 7 of the long-term plan, and we will begin to design these initiatives for implementation this coming program year. So this is really just a look ahead and a note to please keep an eye out for future stakeholder feedback requests and discussion topics related to the implementation of these initiatives in the monthly Consumer Protection Working Group. More information on involvement in that working group is included in the weekly announcements, so look out there if you are interested in helping guide the implementation of these initiatives. Next slide, please. So another important update to the program beginning on June 3rd is a change, or is a few changes to the scoring criteria for the traditional community solar or TCS category. The changes to the scoring criteria from last program year are listed here and really focus on updates to the built environment scoring section and the equity eligible contractors scoring section. The changes are not super different from what participants saw last year, but I really encourage any entities planning to submit TCS applications on or after June 3rd to review these changes so that you're well aware of what your application should look like this program year, as it is different from last program year. Next slide, please. Okay. Another change. As you can see, there's a lot of changes coming to the program year, the new program year. As noted here, the rec delivery contracts have also been updated for the new program year. The changes to the contracts are mostly very minimal, which one more substantial change being that the 5% collateral commitment that has been in place for all projects throughout the history of the program was removed only for projects applying to the public schools category in the Tier 1, Tier 2, or environmental justice community subcategory. So again, as with all of the other updated documents that I've been mentioning, we do provide redline versions of the new contracts against the old contracts, and those can be found on the program documents section of the website. Finally, just wanted to note that all projects that are going to be sent to the Illinois Commerce Commission or the ICC for approval after June 3rd, the start of the program year, will utilize the new rec contracts regardless of the date of application submission. So that's just something to be aware of and to review these new contracts if your application is going to be placed on one of them. Next slide, please. Okay, here's, I think, what most people are probably most interested in. These are the new rec prices for the program year. These have been previously posted on the program website, but I just wanted to pause here for a moment to allow everyone to take a look at these prices and review this slide. So also noted on the slide, there is a new $5 adder for community solar projects that are sited on rooftops. That is a new change to rec pricing in this upcoming program year. And these rec prices, as shown here, will be in place throughout the 2024-2025 program year and will be updated prior to the next program year around this time next year. Let's just wait here for a second, make sure everyone has a good chance to look at these numbers because there's a lot of them.
And just to note, we will send out the slides and the recording as well too, but appreciate Audrey's pause here.
Okay, these are posted online as well, so I think we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Okay, so similar to the previous slide, I'm going to pause here for a moment so that we can review capacity levels for each category and block. These were finalized with the ICC's approval of the 2024 long-term plan. So I just wanted to call out a few changes. You'll notice two distinct changes called out in the bullet points at the top from the previous program year. So first, both distributed generation categories will no longer have their capacity split into Group A and Group B. Now again, that split will still remain for rec pricing, but it will not remain for the block capacity for the program year. These two categories, along with the public schools category, will have capacity offered on a statewide basis. Additionally, you'll notice that the program capacity as a whole has increased quite a bit from that original 666 megawatts in previous years of the program, with this upcoming program year being an expansion to 800 megawatts overall. Okay, next slide. So annual block capacity reallocation is a process where we reallocate any unused or uncontracted capacity at the end of each program year to different program categories that either have wait lists or are needing some more capacity. So in an effort to ensure more steady availability of capacity in the program's two most popular categories, block capacity reallocation was reoriented to ensure that distributed generation categories do not have their annual blocks of capacity largely taken up by waitlisted projects each year. This change, along with the expansion of the overall program size that I just mentioned on the previous slide, should help smooth out the spikes of demand on limited program capacity that we have seen in recent years, especially in the Group A distributed generation categories. So as you can see, small DG and large DG are prioritized first there in that list. And then you can see the list goes on with the prioritizations of how we will reallocate uncontracted capacity at the end of each program year. Next slide, please. Okay, listed here is more information related to the DG and CS subcategories that have been established in both the public schools category and the EEC category. I'm not going to read every single word on this slide because this is kind of to be utilized as a future resource as well. I will go through the basics. So there is going to be a 75-25% split present in both of these categories in order to provide opportunities for both DG and community solar or CS projects to be developed in these newer program categories across the entire program year. So for the public schools category, these subcategories will fade away after 180 days have passed. And for the EEC category, the subcategories will fade away after 11 months have passed. So that's 180 days and 11 months from June 3rd, the opening of these blocks of capacity. After these subcategory prioritizations fade away and are removed, the capacity that remains in these categories is available to all project types for the remainder of the program year. So the subcategories will return at the commencement of next program year next summer, and we'll do the same thing again. Next slide, please. Okay. As we embark on year 2 of the Equity Accountability System, which most people will kind of know as the minimum equity standard and the EEC category in the program, there are several key updates that are listed on this slide to be aware of. I'm going to step through some of them, but I think really a review of this slide as well as the program guidebook is going to be really key to make sure that everyone is well aware of kind of the intricate details of some of this stuff, including certification for EEPs and how that recertification is meant to happen as time goes on. So starting at the top, there will be a new designation for subcontractors to register as EECs. This meets a need expressed to the program by the market to really provide a path to EEC certification for non-designee entities that perform work on projects. So as a reminder, the core definition of a designee is an entity that has a touch point with an end-use customer. So there are a lot of firms or entities that are doing work on behalf of Illinois Shines projects and Illinois Shines approved vendors that don't have a touch point with an Illinois Shines customer, but are still able to become EEC certified in this way for recognition and increase availability and usage of EECs in the market, as well as for those EEC points in the scoring system for the traditional community solar projects. So that is going to be rolled out this year. We've also worked to provide more detail around the timing for recertification for certain EEPs that register based on residency. And we will implement this year a 20% developer cap for the EEC category as well. So that 20% developer cap will be applied separately in Group A and Group B. So it's 20% Group A, 20% Group B capacity. Finally, there are some changes to the advance of capital opportunity that is offered to EECs related to capping the amount of funding that can be requested, as well as we've provided more details on what those requests should look like in order for them to be reviewed more swiftly and to really have all the detail we need in order to make decisions on those requests. And then additionally, for the minimum equity standards, just like this past year or this current year that we have still a few more days in, MES will remain at 10% for this upcoming program year. And just a reminder, the compliance plans for this upcoming program year are due on that first day of the program year on June 3rd. Next slide, please. I believe this is my last slide, and then I hand it over to Patrice. Let my accounts leave it off. So here we go. For prevailing wage requirements, these requirements are unchanged from last year, but we did want to call out these requirements to make sure everyone is well aware of them, and that all approved vendors, old and new, know where to go for resources related to this really key equity portion of the program. So we're continuing to work with the Department of Labor to provide more resources to approved vendors on how to comply with this requirement, how to get the information they need. And we also have a new resource coming soon that will provide some clear guidance on compliance, which we really hope is going to address the most common errors and points of confusion that we're seeing with this requirement. So yeah, I think that ends my portion, and I will now hand it over to Patrice.
Thanks, Audrey. Great. So to take a look at a little bit finer point at some of the changes on the program side for the Energy Solutions team, the administrator, I want to share that we are really pleased to continue the mentorship program for the upcoming year. So last year in the winter, we had a pilot for the mentorship. Some networking opportunities. And so we're really excited to have folks kind of share best practices and kind of talk about program participation and solar best practices. So that's upcoming as well in this cycle. We expect the registration to be around December of this year, at the end of the calendar year, and then we would start workshops at the start of the next calendar year in January. And then have the mentoring in next March. So having similar eight workshops and sessions that are live, and then having a lot of resources and information as supplementary information and takeaways from those sessions. And then additionally, to the folks that are actually participating in the mentorship program, we are going to maximize the materials and the information from that, and we will be sharing materials more broadly, again, available to AVs and designees in the coming year. So we're really excited about that and look forward to continuing that great progress.
Great. And Patrice, your audio had cut out for just a moment on the
Oh.
first part of the segment, but it's a chance for us to let stakeholders know that there was a report published following the launch of the mentorship pilot program earlier this year. That can be found at the program website. We'll drop a link, but we're glad to have you back on audio, Patrice, and I think you might be ready for the next slide.
Thank you. Yes, please give me a heads up. I saw a quick internet blur, but I hopefully I'm doing okay now. All right, so moving into portal and website updates, as Audrey has shared, there are a number of changes in the program, as there are with every cycle. But with this being not only a new program cycle, but a new long-term plan cycle, there were some.
You have cut out and your screen has frozen.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Patrice. Yeah, maybe being off camera, and to Casey's
Perhaps.
point, if you could rewind just a little.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Mike and Casey. Just kind of summarizing that with all of the changes in the new program year and with the new long-term plan, those changes are being reflected not only on our website, but also in our portal in which we accept applications submitted for various projects. So for the next week, starting on Monday, Memorial Day through June 3rd, the portal will be closed for just that week. And in that week, we will be able to make those updates into the portal. So all of the changes that Audrey spoke about that need to be reflected in the portal, as well as the capacity management updates and the dashboard, the program application reports and the project map, all of those will be updated and live on June 3rd. So as a reminder, hopefully you've seen the market announcements recently. The portal functions will be unavailable at that time, including the ability to submit applications and to submit disclosure forms. So there's that 1 week break. Another update for EEC is that the new questions for Part 1 application will be in the portal, so that will go live on June 3rd. And then the TCS applications and updated scoring criteria will also go live on June 3rd. I have more information on TCS, and I know that there were some questions in the Q&A that hopefully we can address in the upcoming slides. As of June 30th, the legacy portal database will no longer be accessible. So the previous implementers database that was accessible for reference will no longer be accessible as of June 30th. And then, of course, as mentioned previously, there's continuous updates and resource additions on the website. So always keep an eye on the website and your email. And I appreciate that Lindsay had shared the reference on how to get on that email list if your team is not on it. So with that, let's take a look at, I believe the TCS updates are on the next slide. Thank you. So here are some consolidated screenshots of what the portal, what the application submission portal will look like with the reflected changes. So anything submitted on or after June 3rd, we're going to require what we're calling version 2 for scoring criteria. So currently, if you were to go into the portal and start an application for TCS, you would see the current program scoring criteria. Because that is changing on June 3rd, you will see new scoring criteria. The scoring criteria, what we're calling version 2 here, will be live on June 3rd. So if you do have any applications in process prior to next week, prior to June 3rd, those will default to to version 2 in section 8, where the scoring criteria is. And there will be some manual updates required. So all that being said, if you have a partially completed TCS application today or in the upcoming days, when you log back in on June 3rd, you will want to make sure that you're carefully reviewing your scoring criteria, because some information will port over, but because there's new criteria, you will need to review that criteria screen and make sure that the criteria and your submitted documentation to support that scoring criteria is uploaded appropriately. So I can kind of pause here for just a moment. You can see some of the updates on the portal. These are screenshots from the newly developed scoring criteria. It will look and feel very similar to the way it does today, but the criteria, of course, will be updated. Okay. Next slide, please. Perfect. So in addition to the mentorship program, there is a continued focus on stakeholder support for the upcoming cycle. That's including the support for the second year of the minimum equity standard, as Audrey alluded to. Of course, support throughout the annual reporting process that is ongoing now. Disclosure form support, vendor FAQs and tips and tricks, working group, the Consumer Protection Working Group, office hours that are consistent as well, and then AV one-on-one support. So there's a couple of ways that we're able to answer questions, talk through barriers, provide additional information, and provide support. One of the best ways, of course, is the roundtables. So we'll host a third series of AV roundtables for each program category, meaning there will be a separate roundtable for DG, a separate roundtable for public schools, etc. And so you'll see that schedule coming once we get those scheduled. You'll see that updated again on the website and via email. We encourage you to enroll in those so you can really hear the questions and answers and be part of that conversation. And then finally, for stakeholder support, the strategy team will also deploy the second annual AV survey. So that is really to understand the general satisfaction of the program, but also to understand what barriers are yet to be addressed. All right, and so with that, we have a bit of time for Q&A.
Yeah, wonderful. I want to say thank you, Patrice, and thank you, Audrey. And we not only have some time, but we have been receiving some questions and answers. So with the team's permission, what I'd like to do is begin reviewing and sharing some of the questions that have already been answered with our audience while we attend to a few others, and I may ask some live questions. So let me get right to it then, if that's okay. Question from a few stakeholders: will the recording of the webinar be shared? And the answer is yes. A copy of the recording, the slides, and also Q&A will be published following the webinar, so you can look for those shortly, and including links to those in the program announcements. There was a question about waitlisted projects, so kind of taking these in the answer, we received them. Do currently waitlisted projects get enrolled first into the upcoming program capacity? In other words, if a project is first on the wait list, will that be enrolled in the upcoming application first available spots? And the answer is yes. New program year capacity as well as uncontracted capacity from the 2023-24 program year, and Audrey spoke about that reallocation described in section 1.I of the 2024-25 program guidebook. Outlines the application to waitlisted projects in rank order until the wait lists are depleted if sufficient capacity is available. So yes, they will be awarded contracts first. Question about API connections. Are there API connections for the completion of disclosure forms to ensure that they are completed prior to contracts? And the answer is yes. The program provides API access in support of disclosure forms. You can email the team, and we'll include this in the FAQs, of course, but api-support@energy-solution.com to request access to the API, including relevant documentation, credentials, and approvals. We had a question, and Lindsay shared a link about getting weekly announcement updates automatically emailed to stakeholders, and we do have a large subscriber list, and the address where you can enroll and subscribe to those was included. You can email us at admin@illinoisshines.com to be added. Okay, I've got a more specific question about the portal closure and some EEP and EEC applications. During the time the portal is closed next week, will applicants still be able to submit applications to become certified as EEPs and EECs? And the answer to that is yes. The AV application and EEC attestation remain available via Microsoft Form, and they're linked in the program announcement and at the program website. And the program announcements of late have included details of all of the services that will continue to operate per usual during the program closure, during which time the portal is closed. We have a question, and this was addressed in an announcement earlier this week, but it was during the temporary closure, will the disclosure form being signed before the contract requirement be waived? And the answer is no. We appreciate your patience as we need to balance the needs of retaining consumer protections while updating numerous items in the program portal to prepare for the new program year opening. So the program will be providing letters tomorrow to stakeholders that can be shared to explain this closure to customers in order to aid during this period while you continue operations. There was a link in the announcement, and then earlier this week, a fuller announcement on the closure and that requirement. So we want to direct your attention there, and we do want to thank every stakeholder for their patience as we balance these needs in recognition of that. I'm getting through a few more, so forgive me. Okay, question was, if we start, and that's the operative word, if we start a TCS application before the portal closes on May 27th, will that application be modified with the new scoring criteria when it opens? And the answer from the agency: if an application is still in process on or after June 3rd, 2024, it will require the user to populate version 2 scoring criteria. So if we're started and submitted prior to June 3rd, it would use version 1. Audrey and Patrice, I just want to confirm that's correct on that important distinction on submission date.
Yep, you've got it. So for submission for the new cycle for June 3rd, you'll need to populate version 2. So before submitting, you'll need to make sure that the scoring criteria is accurate under version 2. That's right.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Patrice. There was a question about how big was the previous program in megawatts. Audrey shared that in the last 2 years, that capacity has been 666 megawatts. I'm sorry, 667 megawatts. That distribution is outlined within the categories by category on page 18 of the 2023-24 program guidebook, and again, increasing to 800 and across categories. Next question was, are there projections for how the excess capacity will be allocated at the end of this program year and how that will impact current waitlist and waitlist lengths? And the response from the agency is, we won't have this information exactly until the portal closes on May 27th, but waitlists are currently posted online. That's at the block capacity dashboard page of the program website. And capacity for new program year and capacity reallocation processes are outlined in the guidebook. The program will be announcing complete block capacity levels over the next week during the time that the portal is closed and after those calculations are completed. So thank you, very important question. Question about, will there be a potential adder for floating solar projects? And the agency's response is that an adder for floating solar projects is not contemplated under the 2024 long-term renewable resources procurement plan for the 2024 and 25 and 25-26 program years, but a note has been made on that item. Thank you. Next question. Why does the $5 REC adder not apply to the community-driven community solar project category? And the response is that the agency did not include a rooftop adder for CDCS projects due to the fact that when the 2024 long-term renewable resources procurement plan was filed with the Illinois Commerce Commission, 29 of the 44 approved CDCS projects were roof-mounted, which indicated that developers of those projects have been appropriately incentivized to develop roof-mounted projects. More information can be found in section 7.5.3 of the 2024 long-term renewable resources procurement plan, and that is linked at the program documents page. Audrey and Patrice, I am getting through more questions. I've got more, but I do want to also open the floor if there are any points you want to speak to on anything I've shared. Otherwise, I can continue to proceed down the list, and we're thankful to all our stakeholders. But let me give you a moment if you'd like to interject anything.
I don't have anything to interject. I appreciate you verbalizing these. There are some good questions, some good clarification.
Okay, great. I'll continue. Audrey, I'll keep an eye as well for you, our other panelists. Okay, if your batch gets waitlisted to next year, confirming that the approval won't take place until the following program year and the applicable rep prices will reflect next year's block pricing, is that correct? And the answer from the agency is yes, that is correct. And we received a confirmation that the REC adder for CS rooftops is $1 per megawatt hour number, and the response from the agency is correct. The adder is $5 per REC per megawatt hour. We received a question that explored what Audrey shared on the reallocation in slide 17 about if we can elaborate on the elimination of the group A and B distinctions for small and large distributed generation projects, forgive me, concerning capacity. And the response is that the agency did not determine it was appropriate to continue to retain the group A and group B distinctions for the small and large DG generation categories, given the market continues to signal there is demand for more development than currently allowed for with the current percentage split in Group A. So there was recently an announcement issued providing some more information, and you can also find more detail in section 7.3.1.1 of the 2024 long-term renewable resources procurement plan, where that was proposed and outlined. We received a question, if a waitlisted project receives capacity and it is not ready for construction, can a more ready project be substituted in its place? And the answer is no, there are no substitutions allowed, and applications sent into the program should be shovel-ready. AVs have 10 days to either move a waitlisted project forward or to forego the spot in line or for the available capacity. So thank you for asking. Next question. Do we have an idea how prices will behave next program year? The long-term plan guidance says it expects rec prices to go down about 4% year over year. 2,000 to 5,000 kilowatt TCS block prices for Group A have gone down over 13% for the past 2 years. Will that be more in line with the decrease or the expected or intended 4%? And the response is we don't have information on this at this time, but rec prices will be released well in advance of the following program year. The 4% figure is a little bit older before the program shifted to annual blocks of capacity. I want to alert stakeholders that the agency does hold stakeholder feedback invitations relating to rec prices and rec contracts, including one that took place this program year. So thank you for that question, and we hope that's responsive. Getting through a few more, some confirmations that yes, excess capacity reallocation will be allocated to waitlisted projects, and that is detailed in section 1.I of the program guidebook. There's a question, you mentioned increased capacity and smoothing out the spikes of demand, which results in wait lists, particularly with Group A. Is increasing the developer cap under consideration? And I'm thinking specifically about traditional community solar. And the response from the agency is that developer caps are established in the long-term plan. So there's not a plan to increase these at this time, but we can consider increases in the future. And we welcome stakeholder feedback on this when that time comes, which is possible or likely around this time next year. So thank you for that question. There was a question just asking for a distinction on sizes between small DG and large DG. And small DG projects are up to and including 25 kilowatt AC in size. Large DG projects are greater than 25 kilowatts and up to and including 5 megawatts AC in size. And that's available at the program website. Thank you. I want to direct stakeholder attention to the project category hubs on the vendor section, which provides some resources specific to each sector category. I'm looking at the clock, Audrey and Patrice. I can make it through some more questions, but I also want to pause if you have anything you'd like to add in response to questions we've received or points that may have occurred to you. So looking your way, but just let me know if you'd like to jump in. Otherwise, I'll continue with a few more with our available time.
I think continuing on is probably best. I've been working to have type of answers as well as you've been answering them verbally.
Okay, thanks. Patrice, I saw your hand go up. Did you want to add something?
Nope, I meant to do the thumbs up. No, please
Okay.
move forward. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you. I'll continue then. And thank you for all your questions. Next one, does the minimum equity standards apply to approved vendors who don't have employees in the state, meaning Illinois, or is it only contractors, parentheses, designees who are installing the solar systems? And the response is that all approved vendors, designees, and nested designees who participated in the Illinois Shines program during the relevant program year need to submit MES compliance plans and year-end reports. Only workers whose duties are performed in Illinois are included in the IPA's project workforce definition for MES compliance. This includes construction, as well as duties related to developing projects, educating consumers, or supporting the project. I do want to direct stakeholder attention to a minimum equity standards page that is part of the equity accountability system page at the program website with a lot of resources, as well as FAQs that are at the vendor FAQ section, including a dedicated section to minimum equity standards. So thank you for that. I have another one. The final long-term renewable resources procurement plan published on April 19th states the reallocation reprioritization starts at the end of the 2023-24 program year, which is contrary to the ICC language. Your slide on the annual block capacity reallocation seems to indicate that was a typo in the plan, and the reprioritization will only start at the end of the 24-25 program year in conformity with the ICC ruling. Can you please confirm the reprioritization does not start until the end of 2024-25 program year? And the response from the agency is that the new reallocation process outlined in the long-term plan will be in use next week for the 2024-25 program year and will be in use at the end of the new program year as well. There was an opportunity to clarify that from the slide, and we can follow up in the post-webinar FAQs. So thank you for flagging an opportunity to add clarification there. Next question. For any applications we draft prior to the closure on the portal on May 27th, will we lose progress or be able to pick up where we left off when it reopens on June 3rd? And the answer is that applications will be saved in the portal with the caveats for the updates to TCS scoring that Patrice mentioned a little while ago, and which were presented, including relevance to version 1 or version 2. So if an application not completed prior to May 27th for TCS, it would be required to use the version 2 application. We've used the acronym TCS a few times, so to clarify, that's Traditional Community Solar. And I want to reiterate another question, a response to a question that the program requirement will remain in effect that customers sign disclosure forms prior to signing contracts, and that applies during the portal closure period. So there will not be leniency or waiver for the requirement of disclosure forms to be signed prior to contracting during that period. Getting through a few more. What is the best way to schedule one-on-one AV support? And answer there, you can reach out to your sector strategist for a one-on-one meeting. And the sector strategists for each sector are available at the program website's project category hub. So by sector, at the bottom of some of that sector-specific information, you'll see a contact name and email, and can reach out directly. And the team supports a great number of AVs through one-on-ones, and we'll be glad to do that for you as well. We are through a lot of questions. I want to recognize we're just about at time. I'm going to try to get through just a couple more, if that's okay. The 2024-25 MES compliance plans are due June 3rd. Since the portal will be closed, does that mean we need to submit by May 27th, or will that be available via MS Microsoft Forms so that portal closure doesn't impact the deadline? And the answer is that will not be impacted by the portal closure. The MES compliance plan form will remain open. It's available at the program website, and stakeholders should expect another forthcoming announcement on minimum equity standards, but please reach out if we can offer support there. We have a question about community solar scoring. I want to quickly get to this one. If projects submitted on the same day receive tied scores, will they be ranked in order of exact timestamp or via randomized selection process? What would the random selection process look like? And the response is that scoring processes for both traditional community solar and community-driven community solar projects are distinct. So depending on which one you're looking for information on, check the program guidebook on how those processes work. They are detailed, so we don't have the room to share them here, but the guidebook provides information there on some of those selection processes, including those that were used this year. I want to acknowledge it's 12:59 right now, and though we have a few more questions, we will pledge to follow those in a follow-up post-webinar document, as we often do, along with the recording and the slides. So I do want to allow just a little bit of time to say thanks to our speakers today, Audrey Steinbach of the IPA and Patrice Flynn of the Energy Solutions and the Program Administrator team. Audrey or Patrice, do you have any closing words you'd like to add before we conclude today's webinar?
I just wanted to say thank you so much again. I know there are a ton of changes that are coming to the program this program year with that new long-term plan. So I really appreciate everyone's patience while we work to get all of the application pieces in the portal set up and ready to go for a really smooth program opening on June 3rd. And again, a big thank you to everyone for participating in the program.
Indeed. Thanks all.
Great. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Patrice. And thank you all for taking time today, joining us, and your questions and participation. Thank you, and we'll